Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for the annual Green Your Neighborhood Community Forum. This is an annual event co-hosted by the Sierra Club Michigan chapter, of which I am a staff member, and Friends of the Rouge. This program aims to help connect residents and community members like you all to programs or opportunities to make your community more sustainable. And it also helps to highlight projects of green infrastructure that already are existing in the community. So we're really excited for our conversation today about Eliza Howell Park, which is a 250-acre park on Detroit's west side. We have two really exciting groups with us today. The first is Greening of Detroit, and they'll be talking a little bit about their work and some of the projects that they've worked on in Eliza Howell. And we also have Sidewalk Detroit, which is another really great organization that focuses on activating public space. So before we get started today, I wanted to tell you all a little bit about the Sierra Club Michigan chapter, which is a environmental nonprofit that is working out of the state of Michigan. My name is Elaine Elliott, and I'm the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Community Organizer. So a lot of my work centers in Detroit, thinking about green stormwater infrastructure issues, helping residents learn more about how to manage stormwater sustainably, whether it be through rain barrels, like the barrel you see pictured here, or rain gardens, like the photo that is on my right. And we also do that through green infrastructure tours, and a photo in the middle is the bike tour. So if you would like to learn more about the Sierra Club Michigan chapter and our work, please visit sierraclub.org/Michigan. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to our partners at Friends of the Rouge. We work really closely with them on a number of programs. And with that, I will pass it to Jackie.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As Elaine introduced me, I'm Jacqueline Hakula with Friends of the Rouge. I am the River Restoration Assistant. So I'll just be kind of talking a little bit about why we do green infrastructure and the importance of that. And throughout the presentation today, there is a Q&A function that you should see at the bottom. So feel free to type in your questions down there, and we'll hopefully get to all of those. Great. So as I mentioned, I'm with Friends of the Rouge, and our mission is to restore, protect, and enhance the Rouge River watershed through stewardship, education, and collaboration. So big picture, we are fortunate to be surrounded by nearly 20% of the available fresh water on Earth. The Great Lakes are vital to our economy, our health, and provide Michiganders with 2,000 miles of sandy beaches to enjoy. Nearly a tenth of the United States population lives in the Great Lakes Basin, and more than 35 million people rely on the Great Lakes for drinking water, jobs, and overall way of life. And it is our responsibility to take care for and protect these precious resources for not only us, but the generations to come. So a little bit about a watershed. A watershed is the area of land that drains to a particular water body. Pictured here is the Rouge River watershed, which is home to nearly 1.5 million people. The Rouge drains 467 square miles of land in or part of 48 communities, including Detroit. The four branches flow south and or east and a riverborne area and flow towards the Detroit River. And then here on the map, I have highlighted a general area of where Eliza Howell Park is. So what we'll be talking about today, just to give you some context. Eliza Howell Park is located where the upper branch meets the main branch, and is just north of Detroit's largest green area park, Rouge Park. And then, of course, whatever we do on the land impacts the quality of the river. So what's the problem? Researchers from U of M say areas with more than 10% impervious surface result in degraded rivers. So here we have an aerial map of Detroit and its impervious land cover. So I believe the statistic is about 48% of Detroit is covered with impervious surface. So what's the problem with that? So during wet weather, water has no place to go. So it leads to flashy river conditions where water levels rise rapidly, scorching riverbanks and washing sediment into the river. And this fills in spaces for fish and other life in the stream that they need for spawning and habitat. And then in Detroit, we have a combined sewer system. So this is where one pipe carries wastewater from our homes and rainwater from our streets and parking lots to the wastewater treatment plant. This is fine during little rain, but during heavy rain or snow melt, the pipes can fill to capacity. To prevent flooding and basement backups, the slurry of raw sewage, cleaning agents, oil, road salts, or anything else that gets in there is discharged directly into the Rouge or Detroit rivers. And this is a huge problem for rivers and is the reason why Detroit is investing in using nature-based solutions to reduce rainwater from ever entering the system. And of course, whatever you do at your home or ends up in the driveway could potentially lead into the rivers and of course affect all of our wildlife as well as the health of ourselves as well. So in Detroit, there is a total of 55 uncontrolled CSO points on that map to the right. 17 that go into the Rouge and 38 directly into the Detroit River. The capacity of the system is exceeded during heavy rainfall. And when this happens, the water is partially treated and then discharged. There is a number of detention basins in Detroit. The basins receive water that would have been discharged into the rivers and is held there to be treated at the wastewater treatment plant, or if it reaches capacity, it is screened for solids and partially treated before emptying into the river. So ways that you can help reduce water pollution just at your home in your daily life. Here's just a list of some things that you can do. One of which is using low phosphorus fertilizers or skipping the fertilizer altogether. When this gets into the water, it has an excess amount of nutrients, which can lead to algal blooms and things that you may have heard about in Lake Erie, because they get our water from us as well. And of course, keeping those fertilizers off of paved surfaces so they don't reach the water. You can also wash your car at a car wash or on your lawn to prevent those soaps from going down the drain. Of course, properly disposing of household waste and never dumping it down the storm drain. Picking up pet waste before it rains. You can also minimize your paved surfaces on your property. You could do that by reducing your lawn size, adding native flowers, or creating a rain garden, as well as disconnecting your downspout if it goes directly to the sewers. And with that, I'll send it back over to Elaine so we can hear more about what they're doing at Eliza Howell.
Perfect. Thank you, Jackie. I am now going to pass it to my colleagues at the Greening of Detroit to share some of their work and how that ties into Eliza Howell.
Great, thank you so much, Elaine. Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Rodella. I'm the Volunteer and Community Outreach Coordinator with the Greening of Detroit. And I'm here with Sam, who I will let herself introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Eanes, and I'm the GI Project Manager with the Greening of Detroit.
Great. Next slide, please, Elaine. So today we're going to talk a little bit about our organization and the different forestry and efforts that we have and are working on throughout the city. And then we're going to go a little bit more into detail about our project at Eliza Howell Park. Next slide, please. So about the Greening of Detroit, we were formed over 30 years ago in response to the city of Detroit losing hundreds of thousands of trees due to different diseases and development across the city. And since then, we've also expanded our programming to include different adult and youth workforce opportunities to make sure that Detroiters have an opportunity to be involved in these reforesting efforts. And in the past 30 years, we've planted over 133,000 trees, and we're continuing to work hard to increase that number throughout the city. Next slide, please. So looking more into reforesting programs throughout the city. Next slide. This map on the right shows where we are currently at with different tree canopy throughout the city. So if you look at the map, the darker green shows the density of trees. So on the west side, if you can see where Rouge Park would be, or Eliza Howell Park, it's very dense and tree covered. And then on the east side, a good example is Belle Isle. And this map shows that the city currently has around a 24% tree coverage. It's important to note that it's recommended that an urban area has 40 to 60% tree coverage. So you can see we have a long way to go with those efforts. Next slide, please. And more into why we want to reforest the city. A huge piece of it is how trees affect and improve our public health. So this map on the right was a study that EcoWorks did last summer that kind of maps the different urban heat island effects throughout the city. And the dark red shows heat concentrations in areas that kind of are more affected by high temperatures. So those 90, 100-degree summer days that Detroit does get can have a huge public health impacts, as well as more opportunities for certain heat stroke and high costs of air conditioning. So one way that we look at this is kind of to see look at this map and see where tree coverage could play an impact on people's health. Next slide, please. So more into our community forestry program. Next slide, please. I talked a little bit about how trees do improve and regulate the air temperature, but of course trees have many other impacts. They manage for climate change and clean our air. They of course manage stormwater runoff, a little bit that Jackie talked about as well, and they clean our water before it goes back into our rivers and lakes. And then also they just provide senses of place, gathering points for people, gathering places as well for habitat, different wildlife, birds and pollinators. So there's many impacts that trees can have throughout our daily lives. So the Greening of Detroit services Detroit, Highland Park, and Hamtramck, and we plant plants at many different sites. We'll work with the city to planted parks, on city streets and greenways. And then we also work with block clubs and different community organizations to identify lots that they're working on developing and where trees could fit in. And then another part of this is that since 2017, we've been working with the city of Detroit to identify with them on their street tree program, which is the 10,000 up program. So if a resident comes to us and wants a street tree, we will refer them to the city program. So we have a really good program partnership with them. Next slide, please. So one big program that the Greening of Detroit has is our community tree planting program. So residents or block clubs can find our application and submit it online, and then we'll work with them throughout the around 12 to 18 months that this process takes place, and we'll do site visits and work with them to establish where trees could go on their property and provide different technical resources and funding opportunities through this program. Next slide, please. And looking into what we plant, we really do prioritize urban tolerant trees that will best be resilient to the impacts of climate change. So this ends up being a lot of native species, and a little bit more that Sam will go into is that we really work to make sure that the right tree is planted for the right space. So we'll kind of make sure that they can survive and thrive in the areas that they're planted. Next slide, please. And then looking into who we plant with, we work with lots of different volunteers so that they have a chance to be involved in the planting process. We'll reach out to community groups, communities in which the areas we're planting so that they can be involved. And then different other organizations in the city and companies who want to come out to our planting days. We also have a citizen forester program in which we will train certain folks who want to be more consistently involved in our volunteer plantings. And then we also do employ a staff and crew for the work as well. And we did just release our spring schedule for 2021. So if you're interested in coming out to help plant trees or just see what that process is like, I can put a link to that website page after this. And then lastly, I just wanted to say that the work of reforesting the city cannot be done alone. We rely on and work with a lot of different environmental partners, city entities to work together to increase the tree canopy. So with that, I'm going to pass it along to Sam, who's going to talk more about our work in Eliza Howell Park.
All right, thank you, Christina. Okay, we can go to the next slide. All right, so as already mentioned, Eliza Howell Park is located in the northwestern portion of Detroit. So you can see it there in District 1. And this was a really exciting place for us to do a tree planting project because the greening is more so known for planting street trees and in city parks. So this allowed us to plant more in a natural forest setting. So a little bit more detail. Eliza Howell Park is a 250-acre park. And it would be considered a floodplain since it's near the Rouge River, which can be really flashy. So our project here, we installed a stormwater management practice in the form of an infiltration basin, which I'll get more into later. But the site conditions here are pretty unique. It's a really sensitive landscape, which means it requires more care. And it also required us to pull an Eagle wetland permit. And some of the other experts we had involved in this were the City of Detroit, OHM, and of course, Sidewalk Detroit. All right, so going into stormwater management, our infiltration basin manages 112,000 gallons of water per rain event, and that's coming from the park and also the I-96 service drive. So the picture down in the lower left-hand corner, that green rectangle, that's where our infiltration basin was installed. And then the blue shadowing, that's the amount of surface runoff that actually flows to our infiltration basin. So you can see how large the area is. And then to make this happen, we worked really closely with the engineer who is the key to the project design. They helped to map out the ground elevations for flooding, which was really helpful for us in planting out or doing the planting design and the planting placement. And then after that, we hired an experienced contractor through an RFP process. And then really quickly, just to show what the site was looking like, that middle picture showed the first week of construction and getting ready. And then shortly thereafter, there was a huge storm event that just flooded the site for days. So you can see why this practice was so necessary here. All right, then going into plant selection. We really prioritize planting native species here. We did that for a number of reasons. One of the main ones is that native species grow deeper roots, which is better for water infiltration. So you can see at the graphic at the bottom, all the way to the left, that's Kentucky bluegrass, which usually makes up people's lawns. And you can see just how shallow those roots are in comparison to the native species, whose roots can grow down as far as 8 feet deep, which is great. Another reason we planted natives was they're already adapted to existing site conditions there, and they provide a food source and habitat for pollinators and wildlife. And so a couple of resources that we used to make this plant selection. The first was the Michigan Natural Features Inventory, and that's a really great website that promotes rare species that are found in different Michigan landscapes. So we used the layer that showed what vegetation was in Eliza Howell Park in the 1800s. So trying to reintroduce some of those species back in. Another resource we used was the 2004 Flora of River Rouge Park Report. And that's also a really great resource. It has a lot of the same information, and that can be found on Friends of the Rouge's website. All right, so then going into the plant species we chose. So we planted a mixture of seed mix, shrubs, and trees here. And knowing the elevation and the site conditions that they're tolerant to is really key to making sure that these species can survive. So that shows a list there of a couple of the shrubs that we planted. And then for the trees, that was really important to know the elevation. So trees planted at or below the 600-foot elevation, we needed to pick species that could thrive in wet conditions. So there we planted the hackberry, swamp white oak, and black gum. And then above 600 feet elevation, those are species that thrive in more upland or drier forest habitats. So there we planted basswood ortilia, musclewood, American beech, and also sugar maple. Okay, and then this just shows our construction and planting timeline. So the first picture there was taken July 2020. I took that off of the I-96 service drive. And this was before construction began. And I'm sure you're thinking, oh, it's so green and lush, you know, why would you come in and disturb it? But there's actually a parking lot that's underneath that grass for when this area was used as a playground. So that acts as a barrier, you know, not allowing stormwater to infiltrate down into the ground. So in August, construction began. You can see the contractor excavating, you know, the top asphalt off of that, and then going into the stormwater picture again. And then once that receded in September, we were able to have our first volunteer event, which was a wildflower seeding and erosion control blanket installation. And that was really great. Everything stayed put. So that was good. October, that's when we opened it up for our tree plantings. We held, I believe, 5 tree planting events, and this was taken at our Halloween planting. So there's a group with a multi-stem witch hazel. And then November 2020, that's when the majority of the construction and planting work was completed. And there's just some riprap off of I-96. All right, and so then moving into 2021, these are just a handful of the species that we hope to see blooming this year. A lot of these were laid down as seed mixtures, so we're hoping that they survive through the winter. And these were purchased from the Michigan Wildflower Farm, which is another great resource if you're looking to purchase native seed mixes. And also we have a handful of shrubs in here too, such as buttonbush, bladdernut, and sambucus. All right, and so if anyone's motivated after that and you're kind of like inspired and thinking, how can I plant a tree? Just going back to what Christina said, you can always come and volunteer with us. We have our events page updated all the time. You can also look into how to become a citizen forester. If you're interested in getting your own tree, like Christina said, we have our community tree planting application. There's also the 10,000 Up program through the city, which is a free service. Or if you just need advice on how to plant a tree, there's the U.S. Forest Service's Tree Owner's Manual, which is good. Or you can always reach out to one of us at the Greening. We have a handful of arborists on staff, so we would be happy to answer any questions you have. And then with that, we just want to say thank you, and we'll hand it over.
Perfect. Thank you so much to our friends at Greening, Sam and Christina. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sidewalk Detroit to talk more about what's going on at Eliza Howell.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Myers-Johnson with Sidewalk Detroit. Thank you, everybody who's talked about Eliza Howell and all the wonderful info. I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see that? Okay, cool. So people have already said a lot of great things about Eliza Howell Park and some technical aspects of it. I'm going to talk more about kind of what attracts me to Eliza Howell Park and I guess what Sidewalk Detroit is doing in it. So just a really quick and short Sidewalk Detroit, you notice we are not friends of Eliza Howell Park. We're an organization, a nonprofit that focuses on advancing spatial equity through the lens of arts and culture and engagement with residents. And so what that looks like is us doing lots of different types of programs and interventions within public space. So that could be an image that you see here from our annual festival in Eliza Howell Park, Orange, Gold, and Green. So that could be bringing artists out to a space. That could be working with architects or developers or planners around public space design or residents in general. I'm the executive director and founder of the organization, but we are a 4-person team with lots of volunteers and contractors and friends that kind of help us execute our work. We have a bunch of different programs. Really quick, our kind of anchor programs are Sidewalk Festival, which happens at Grand River and Lasser. It's a street festival of performance meant to facilitate joy and experimentation in public spaces. We have our online artist residency program, which was born out of COVID. Eliza Howell Park, which we're talking about today, and I'll go more into detail about that. And then finally, public engagement. So what's happening in public space, what's happening with that building on the street. Sidewalk Detroit is excited to work with residents on developing plans to envision the community that community members want. So we already know Eliza Howell Park is this beautiful hidden gem. It's the fourth largest park. You already know it's really important, the Rouge River, there's hiking trails. But just to talk a little bit about it from a human perspective, I used to live in Brightmoor, right across the street from Eliza Howell Park, and was just really enchanted by what I saw going on there. So deer, coyote, all sorts of different types of birds. It was just really magical. And I found myself, drawn to the park, walking in the park. But while there, I also couldn't help but notice the really strong need for some infrastructure improvements. So just from basic things like just average maintenance, in particular, I noticed the flooding, because you can't not experience the flooding in Eliza Howell Park if you visit it on a regular basis. So the current road, which, fingers crossed it'll be getting redone soon, but the current road has been damaged by a lot of flooding. And so what was the answer to that question? Why does the road become impassable? Why, I guess, out of so many days out of the year is Eliza Howell Park, just totally flooded and really not accessible to a lot of people. And so as an artist, I didn't know the answers to those questions or really how to approach it. So we just started talking to residents, talking to people who had been working on behalf of Eliza Howell Park to just get to know more about the problems. And so that's when we started to understand that a lot of it is stormwater management and a need for green infrastructure. So this is not my area of expertise. So in order to really think about how do we start to make changes in the park, we took a two-pronged approach, which was one, to do programming there. How can we activate this park so we can bring people into the park and sort of elevate the status of Eliza Howell Park among Detroit parks? We meet lots of people. I still meet lots of people who've never heard of the park, who don't understand that this is actually a regional park that is this incredible ecological resource and an important sort of confluence of the Detroit River, different. Okay, I'm not even gonna try to go into the science of it. I'll just stick in my area, which is more human programming. But anyway, so with that, we decided, how can we start to address some of these issues? So we worked together with community members to design a master plan for the park. So that is kind of jumping ahead. What we really started doing was asking a lot of questions of the city, of different organizers about, is there a master plan for Eliza Howell Park? What is the long-term strategy for making this park accessible and sort of caring for it in the way that it needs to be cared for, not just from a maintenance standpoint, but also in terms of restoring the natural habitat and just beautifying the park. And so you may even be able to see a little bit of the flooding in this picture back there. But in 2016, we worked together with Living Lab, which are landscape architecture firm based out of Detroit that does collaborative design, on deciding what is a dream for Eliza Howell Park. So we held events, we had lots of information sessions where we worked together with community to envision, what this park could be and what we would want it to be. And so these are just some renderings from the master plan, which we created in collaboration with community members, with Living Lab and with the city of Detroit, to envision a future for Eliza Howell Park. And so this is also just a kind of quick shot of the whole park itself and part of the plan that we implemented. So you can see on the right, this is the part of the plan that we've been working on over the past 2 years. So we applied for funding and we received support from Erb Foundation, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, to start to address some of the issues in Eliza Howell Park. And so in 2020, one of the things that we did, well, some of the things that we did was improving the limestone pathway. So if you look here, this section of the pathway is new. And then we also we just added that. Previously, the pathway was just a loop across the sort of Eliza Howell Park island, and it was pretty overgrown and maybe about, I don't know, probably about 8 inches across in some areas, not exactly accessible. So anyway, we widened it to 8 feet so that it's more accessible, and then provided a cut through so that people could experience different parts of the park. We also installed a boardwalk, which is just over the vernal pond. So there's a vernal pond, which is, there's lots of places that, the water levels rise and fall. But in any case, this pond is a particular space for semi-aquatic species. There's a great little tadpole situation that happens there, but without protection, you'll just step on them and kill the poor tadpoles. And then they were also, it's not funny, but it's kind of sad, they were also getting mowed over because all of this area was just sort of rife with invasive species, and a lot of it was just existing as mowed lawn. So instead, we restored the vernal pond, and then along with this section and a few other sections in the park, restored some of the native prairie. So we worked with Natural Community Services, also OHM advisors and Living Lab to work out all of those details. Yeah, and so those are just some stats on what we did. We also installed rain garden, a 1/4-acre rain garden along the loop road where some of the most intense flooding happens. So it's not solving the problem, but hopefully it'll mitigate some of it as we advocate for more green infrastructure in a more sustainable road system in Eliza Howell Park. So that's a quick snapshot of the work that we've been doing in Eliza Howell. This year, we'll be continuing with programming. That's actually, I think I got a couple pictures of some of the programs we do. That's actually our main jam with our annual Orange, Gold, and Green Festival, as well as weekly health and wellness programs spring through the summer. So that includes like yoga in the park, drum and dance. We'll be doing a 3-week artist residency in September with the land artist Patrick Doherty. So if you're interested in working together on some amazing willow tree sculptures in Eliza Howell Park, you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram, or just send me an email at Ryan@Sidewalk Detroit. So with that, I will pass it along. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan. So as you see, there's a lot going on in terms of green infrastructure, but also in terms of programming at Eliza Howell. And with that, we're going to open it up for questions. So if you have anything that you're wondering either about greening or about Sidewalk Detroit and the work going on at Eliza Howell, please feel free to either drop it in the chat or use the Q&A feature, and we'll kind of have a discussion about any questions you all may have.
So we did have some questions that people put in the Q&A that we did get some answers, but in case no one saw those, I wanted to bring those up too. So Joshua was wondering about some of the programs with Greening of Detroit, particularly for like middle school age kids. So if Christina, if you want to like summarize those for everyone else on the call. Or if there's any other
I can definitely jump in. Joshua, that was a really great question, and there's kind of a couple different answers. So we do have some curriculum that we share with teachers and students, or we're happy to jump in on a virtual kind of session in which we can introduce some of the environmental topics. Another thing that we usually do, it kind of changes, of course, given COVID times, but we invite school groups to our nursery at Rouge Park to do kind of an educational tour and volunteering. So if any of those sound interesting to you or possible this spring or summer, feel free to just shoot me an email. I put my email in the Q&A, but I can put it in the chat as well to get in touch. And then another thing I did want to bring up, I didn't talk about it during the presentation, but we did just open up applications for our Green Corps program. So that's open to students ages 14 to 17. And it's a really great experience. The students get paid throughout the summer. It's a 5-week program this year, virtually. So they'll get to learn about environmental topics. We're working on incorporating some kind of hands-on activities for them as well. but it's through the greening and GDYT, so they get paid for learning about these topics. And we did it all virtually last year and got amazing reviews from the students. They really enjoyed it and kind of had a fun time learning about the different tree topics and career pathways they could take in forestry and other environmental careers. So I will put the application in the chat as well, and please spread to any student you know who is looking for something to do in the summer.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that programming. And then we had a question from Friends of Rouge Park that Sam answered, but for anyone else wondering who will be responsible for maintenance, particularly of the basin project, or if you want to talk a little bit more about general maintenance and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. So this project, I should note, it is grant funded from the EPA. So we have, you know, a base amount that we work with to conduct maintenance. So that's why we're only doing it through 2021. But we will be working with the city to make sure, you know, that it's maintained properly. This year, we are going to be going out there. We're going to be monitoring for invasive weed removal. And we're also going to do, I think we're scheduling 3 mowings at specific times to make sure that, you know, we try to weed out any of the invasives that might be showing up. And like Cindy had mentioned, there are Phragmites present there. So we're going to do our best to try to reduce those as much as possible.
Awesome. And then there was another question that Julia had kind of adjacent to that. Is there going to be a monitoring program at Eliza Howell to track the changes in vegetation and wildlife?
Yeah, so that's something Christina and I, we have been talking about, you know, how can we include residents in this project as much as possible and make them aware. And I think that is a great opportunity for some citizen scientist opportunities to have, you know, residents come out, you know, kind of take note of what they see growing, what's blooming during which months. So yeah, Christina and I, we can expand on that a little bit more and make sure to add that to our events page.
Yeah, that's awesome. Excuse me. And it's really great to hear about like the vernal pond too at Eliza Howell, because I know at Friends of the Rouge, we're just getting started with our frog and toad monitoring for this spring. So we would love to have some more locations where those frogs can find a nice home, because unfortunately most of them are kind of pushed into the upper stream areas because those tend to be better quality habitat for those frogs and toads. So it's really wonderful always to hear about these fantastic projects going around in Detroit that are improving the native habitat for wildlife, and of course all the wonderful residents around too. Let's see, so we got a few more questions.
Yeah, there's one that came through the chat. Was there an assessment of, sorry, I just got a new chat. Was there an assessment of how these projects would benefit the Rouge River that flows through the park?
So for ours, when we were working with our engineer, one of the main things that we did was this infiltration basin is supposed to take stormwater runoff from I-96 and divert it into our infiltration basin as opposed to just going right into the Rouge River. So I'm not sure as to much more details than that, but we just know that we're diverting a lot of the pollutants that would run directly into the Rouge River, and we're kind of mitigating that to have it capture in the infiltration basin first. So that's hopefully really going to help, you know, reduce CSOs, reduce pollutants from getting in the Rouge River.
And then a follow-up question to that, and I guess this is both a question for Ryan and for Sam. As you all think about long-term maintenance for this space, like how are you training city employees to kind of recognize some of the green infrastructure or native habitat improvements that you all are making? And I guess, Sam, like long-term, will there be some kind of training for the General Services Department at the city to kind of explain the nuances of managing green infrastructure relative to like mowing lawns?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So at the Greening, we have a curriculum that's already developed for our workforce development program that ties into this. So we already have those materials created and we have a really great relationship with the city. So, once our maintenance time is up, we will definitely reach out to them, let them know, teach them what we can with our materials to make sure that it's maintained so that it continues thriving and keeps the native plants growing there as opposed to the invasive. So it'll definitely be have to be done in phases, but we're very open to that.
Yeah, for us, we've been creating the work that we do in collaboration with General Services Department and with the Parks Department. So um, they've just been a part of all the plans. We're also grant funded, so our work includes maintenance of natural community services and monitoring through 2023. And then the city is to take over for the long term. But hopefully Sidewalk Detroit will be able to continue to collaborate, as well as we're a part of the Eliza Howell Park Partnership, which is a forming nonprofit organization, formerly Friends of Eliza Howell Park, that's been evolving to include some organizations, including the Audubon Society, some citizen naturalists, as well as organizations like Sidewalk Detroit and members of the city of Detroit.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions before we start to wrap up? It looks like we have some conversation in the chat going on about some monitoring opportunities if anyone is interested in learning more about that. Just trying to make sure we didn't miss any of the questions.
I just answered one of Ruth's questions really quick. She was asking, what are we doing to protect the trees from damage from mower equipment? And at the Greening, we always create mulch beds that go around the tree that are wide enough to make sure that, any weed whackers or mowing equipment doesn't come close to the trunk of the tree.
Nice. And someone in the chat said time for a field trip, and I could not agree more, especially as the weather starts to warm up here in Michigan. If you have not been to Eliza Howell, this is a great time to go check it out.
I just wanted to throw in as well, I know Sam had put in our volunteer website, but we do have a specific volunteer event scheduled for April 9th, which will be planting the rest of the shrubs around the infiltration basin. So if you want to come out, feel free to sign up through the website and I can send you some more information.
Perfect, thank you. All right, go ahead.
I'm forgetting the date right now, but early May, I believe maybe May 7th, we're going to do a nature walk with the Eliza Howell Park Partnership to walk through some of the new improvements on. I should also note that most of the work that Sidewalk Detroit has done on Eliza Howell Park is on the, I guess the northern side of the park. So between Finkel and 96, but more on Finkel and Telegraph side.
Nice, perfect. Thank you all. And with that, I would like to thank each of you for joining us for the second installment of our annual Green Your Neighborhood Community Forum. This is the second conversation, but it is not our last conversation. So if you liked our conversation today, our next conversation is on Monday, so next Monday, March 22nd from 6 to about 7:30 p.m. We're talking with Karen Firehawk, who's the director of the Green Infrastructure Institute, about the power of trees as a stormwater management tool. So today's conversation was kind of a good segue or teaser for more information about what that looks like. On March 29th, the Sierra Club and Friends of the Rouge run two joint programs. One is Rain Gardens to the Rescue, which is a program that teaches residents about the power of rain gardens and how to install rain gardens, and also helps them through the installation process. This year, we're focused on districts 1, 2, and 7. If that is something you're interested in, you can apply to get a free rain garden installed at your home. or at your house of worship or community center. We're talking in detail about that program on March 29th, and we will also be discussing the Stormwater Specialist Training Program, which is a green jobs development program that looks specifically, or that aims to train participants on how to manage green infrastructure projects long-term. And our last conversation in this series will be green infrastructure and placemaking, a look at Detroit's cultural center, where we're talking with the Charles H. Wright Museum and some of the designers involved in the new redesign for Detroit's Cultural Plaza, which includes the Detroit Institute of Arts, the Detroit Historical Museum, the Michigan Science Center, and the Detroit Public Library, among others. So looking at what the green infrastructure plans are for that new redesign. And that conversation is on Thursday, April 1st from 4 to 5 p.m. And if you would like to learn more about the remainder of the series and our programs, you can visit therouge.org/green-your-neighborhood. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today. Someone asked, will the talks be taped? Yes, all the talks will be taped. If you would like to make sure you get the link for those, please go ahead and register anyway. And with that, I am going to close us out. Thank you all. Bye-bye.